A woman kneels beside the edge of a river, about 40 kilometers away from the nearest coastline. In her hand is a small seashell. It is not a tool. It is not something to eat. It is a tiny spiral shell with a hole carefully made through its center, an object that has only one real purpose: to be worn as decoration, exchanged with someone else, or given as a meaningful gift. The moment takes place around 80,000 years ago. There are no roads beneath her feet. There are no large villages nearby. In every direction, only small groups of people live, separated by hundreds of kilometers of wild land. Yet the shell she is holding did not come from this river. It came from the sea. Someone carried it here. Someone passed it from one person to another. Many of us imagine ancient humans living in complete isolation. We picture small groups scattered across an empty world, each surviving alone with almost no contact with anyone else. But the evidence tells a very different story. It reveals something far more surprising. It suggests that people were connected to one another long before farming began, long before writing was invented, and long before anyone even had a word for something we now call trade. Part 1. The object that shouldn't be there. Archaeology often begins with a simple question. Instead of asking, "What happened here?" archaeologists ask, "Why is this object in a place where it should never have existed?" A single seashell does not seem important. But finding a seashell inside a cave located 40 kilometers away from the coast is another matter entirely. No river could have carried it there. No powerful storm could have pushed it that far inland. No animal is known to transport marine shells over such distances. The distance between these caves and the coastline is simply too great for nature to explain. That leaves only one answer. A human being brought it there. Deliberately. This tiny discovery may seem insignificant, but it changes the way we think about our ancestors. Because by around 40,000 years ago, this behavior had become even more remarkable. People were no longer carrying decorative shells for just a few dozen kilometers. Some shells traveled more than 500 kilometers from where they were originally collected. 500 kilometers. On foot. Across unfamiliar landscapes. Through territories occupied by different groups of people. Generation after generation, these objects continued moving from one community to the next. Something important was already taking place. Different groups of humans, people who spoke different languages, had never built cities, and never recorded a single exchange, were somehow connected. Objects kept traveling between them. And those movements reveal the first signs of something extraordinary. The earliest thread of a vast human network had already begun to form. Part 2. The question hidden beneath the story. Most people believe that trade began only after civilization appeared. The common idea is that people first needed cities, written records, money, and organized governments before they could exchange goods across long distances. But the evidence points in the opposite direction. Those ancient shells are far older than the first cities. They are older than farming. They are even older than permanent settlements in most parts of the world. Many of the places where archaeologists discovered these shell beads are located so far from the ocean that there is only one reasonable explanation: they were intentionally carried there by people. Researchers believe there are two possibilities. The first is that people traveled all the way to the coast themselves, collected the shells, and then walked back home. The second, and more likely explanation, is even more fascinating. The shells did not make the journey with just one person. Instead, they were passed from one group to another, then to another again, slowly moving across the landscape through a chain of exchanges. In this way, coastal communities became connected with people who may have lived their entire lives without ever seeing the ocean. If that is true, then trade did not begin because civilization existed. Instead, civilization may have grown because trade already connected people long before cities ever appeared. Part 3. The stone that crossed the sea. To understand just how advanced these early connections were, we need to look toward an island. That island is Cyprus. It lies in the eastern Mediterranean, separated from the mainland by open water. From the shore, you cannot see the land on the other side. A mistake while crossing these waters could easily become fatal. Yet archaeological evidence shows that hunter-gatherers were reaching Cyprus more than 12,000 years ago, long before permanent villages were established there. They were not drifting there by accident. They knew where they were going. More importantly, they were able to make the return journey. Another discovery makes this story even more remarkable. Off the coast of Italy, underwater archaeologists uncovered evidence of obsidian that had likely crossed the Aegean Sea around 13,000 years ago. The volcanic glass had traveled nearly 80 nautical miles from its original source. Obsidian is a natural volcanic glass. It forms only in a few specific places where volcanic activity once occurred. Most regions have no natural source of it at all. Yet pieces of obsidian have been found on islands and in mainland areas where no volcano has ever existed. There is only one logical explanation. People transported it across the sea. Imagine the journey. A small boat floating over open water. No compass. No maps. No modern navigation. Only experience, memory, the movement of the waves, and the position of the sun guiding the way. Inside the boat lies a cargo of sharp black stone. Its destination is a distant community that values this material enough to wait for its arrival. This was about far more than simple survival. People did not need obsidian just to stay alive. They crossed dangerous seas because the material had value. Even tens of thousands of years before coins or money existed, humans already understood an important idea. Some things were valuable enough to make difficult journeys worthwhile, even journeys across the open sea. Part 4. The Blue Stone and the Longest Journey. Now let us move forward in time and travel east. High in the rugged mountains of what is now northeastern Afghanistan lies a remote region known as Badakhshan. This isolated landscape is home to one of the world's only major natural sources of a brilliant deep blue stone called lapis lazuli. Even today, miners climb steep mountain paths and carry loads weighing up to 60 kilograms on their backs. The work is exhausting, and in many ways it has changed very little over the past 5,000 years. What makes this stone truly remarkable is not where it was found, but where it eventually appeared. Lapis lazuli from these distant mountains has been discovered inside the tombs of Egyptian pharaohs, more than 4,000 kilometers away. Think about that distance. Between Afghanistan and Egypt lie deserts, mountains, valleys, and countless communities. There was no single road connecting these places. No merchant made the entire journey alone. Instead, as early as 3500 BC, trade routes linked ancient Mesopotamia with the eastern source of this precious stone. The lapis lazuli moved step by step. One group exchanged it with another. Then another group carried it farther. Culture after culture helped move it across the continent. Many of the people handling the stone probably had no idea where it had originally been mined, or where it would finally end its journey. This is perhaps the most astonishing part of the story. No king designed this network. No empire planned every route. No central authority told people where to carry the stone. The system grew naturally. Each exchange was a small decision made by ordinary people. One trade led to another. One journey connected with the next. Over hundreds of years and thousands of individual choices, an enormous trade network slowly came into existence. It stretched across an entire continent, yet no single person was ever in control of it. Part 5. When objects became a way of communicating. By the 3rd millennium BC, another important center had emerged in the deserts of what is now Iran. This settlement, known as Shar-i-Sokhta, had become much more than a small village. It had developed into a major center where valuable materials were carefully crafted. Archaeologists uncovered huge numbers of lapis lazuli fragments, broken pieces, unfinished beads, completed jewelry, and the stone tools used to shape them. These discoveries show that skilled workers spent generations turning rough bluestone into luxury goods that could be traded with distant lands. These were not craftsmen making ornaments only for their neighbors. They were part of something much larger. Their workshops stood along an established network that connected mountain mines, desert settlements, fertile river valleys, and powerful kingdoms. The routes became so reliable that they remained in use, with only minor changes, for nearly 2,000 years. Once a network like this exists, it begins carrying much more than valuable goods. Ideas travel with the traders. New skills spread from one community to another. Different cultures influence each other's art, beliefs, and technologies. Along these same trade routes, Mesopotamia imported not only lapis lazuli, but also essential materials such as copper and tin, resources needed to create tools, weapons, and objects that represented wealth and authority. Even religious traditions, artistic styles, and diseases followed these same paths. Trade was never just about moving objects. It became a way of connecting entire societies. In many ways, it was the world's first information network. It moved far more slowly than today's internet. Instead of digital signals, it relied on people walking, pack animals carrying goods, and boats crossing rivers and seas. But the basic idea was exactly the same. Once two distant places became connected, they began sharing far more than the original reason that brought them together. Part 6. The Unexpected Truth. This is where the story becomes even more thought-provoking. Many of us imagine early human history as a world of isolated tribes, each living alone with little or no contact with others. We picture small communities separated by vast empty landscapes, each developing its own way of life without outside influence. But the physical evidence tells a different story. Decorative shells traveled more than 500 kilometers. Obsidian crossed stretches of open sea. Lapis lazuli made its way across an entire continent, passing through countless hands, even though the people involved never met one another. All of this suggests something surprising. Perhaps isolation was not the normal way early humans lived. Perhaps connection was. Long before farming, long before cities, and even before the invention of the wheel, our ancestors already seemed driven to reach beyond the limits of their own world. They wanted more than survival. They wanted to know what existed beyond the horizon. They wanted objects from distant places. And they wanted to send something of their own into the hands of people they would never meet. That desire did not begin with civilization. Instead, civilization may simply be the result of that ancient human instinct growing stronger as more people became connected. Part 7. A journey that never ended. That same instinct is still with us today. The only difference is that the objects have changed. Think about this smartphone in your pocket. It contains rare minerals collected from different parts of the world, often from mines spread across several continents. Or think about the coffee you drink each morning. Before reaching your kitchen, it may have crossed an entire ocean. Even an ordinary package delivered to your home has likely traveled through warehouses, ports, trucks, ships, and airplanes, moving through a global system so vast that no single person, not the buyer, not the seller, and not even the engineers who built the network, can trace every step of its journey. Today, we call this system logistics. Thousands of years ago, it was something much simpler. It was a small shell carried on foot for 40 kilometers by someone whose name has been lost forever. That person would never know where the shell's journey would finally end. Yet they carried it anyway. The network that connects people through exchange is older than farming. It is older than cities. It may even be older than language as we know it today. It could be one of the oldest behaviors that defines what it means to be human. At this very moment, somewhere in the world, an object is making its way towards someone it has never met. Perhaps it is inside a warehouse. Perhaps it is waiting at a busy seaport. Perhaps it is flying across the sky inside the cargo hold of an aircraft. Its journey depends on countless strangers working together, most of whom will never know one another's names. In many ways, they are continuing the same story that began tens of thousands of years ago. A single shell, a single hand, and one simple decision. To believe that distance was never meant to separate people. It was an invitation to explore. A doorway waiting to be crossed. And ever since then, humanity has never stopped walking through it.